As always, a link to the build and Destiny item manager is in the description below. Guess what? I have a new favorite PvP build. This is an incredibly strong build with one of the best neutral games in the sandbox because we have 3 different abilities we can use to freeze our opponents, and those 3 abilities come off cooldown incredibly fast. Buckle up, folks. This video is a double feature. First, let's quickly get the build out of the way, which was inspired by a recent video from Cammycakes, and a link to that video is also in the description. We're going to be rocking stasis with the aspects Frost Pulse and Ice Flare bolts. This lets us chain freeze when we shatter a frozen opponent and also lets our Rift freeze on cast. Because of this, we'll be using Empowering Rift, which has a slightly faster cast animation than the Healing Rift. Our fragments are Hedrons, Chains, Torment, and you can either run Rending for the bonus damage against frozen targets with your kinetic primary weapon, or you can do what I did instead and run Whisper of Conduction for the bonus 10 resilience and 10 intellect. The reason I switched from Rending to Conduction in my build was because I'm almost always within either melee, shotgun, or fusion range, which doesn't get or even need the bonus damage from Rending, so I opted to get those bonus stats instead. And we are of course running the coldsnap grenades, which were recently buffed and will have a delicious 26-second cooldown after we're done with it. The important stats to aim for are 10 recovery and 10 discipline. The rest is more personal preference. I like at least 3 to 4 mobility, 4 to 5 strength, and the rest in intellect, but as always this will depend upon the specific rolls on your armor. I also always try to run at least 6 resilience. I just feel it gives me so much more survivability. To have our grenade up as often as possible, we will be rocking Eye of Another World, which drops all of our ability cooldowns by roughly 20%, but most importantly, it brings our tier 10 Rift to 34 seconds, so we have the bonus damage and freeze option available very often. And when combined with Kickstart and Bomber, it brings our tier 10 47-second coldsnap grenades down to 34 seconds, which can be brought down even further every time we take damage thanks to Whisper of Torment. I've recorded it as low as 26 seconds with Bomber, Kickstart, and 2 procs from Torment. And remember, coldsnap grenades have the seeker travel speed increased by 70%, so they are much more reliable now. In other words, we are going to have our abilities up very often to be able to freeze and be a general annoyance to our enemies in nearly every single engagement. As far as mods go, we're going to be rocking the standard charge with light build, taking charge, charge harvester, high energy fire, and radiant light for the bonus strength. Then grenade kickstart and bomber, which will knock even more time off our grenades. The rest of your mods should be first spent on targeting, loader, or dexterity if you can fit it, on flinching and scavenger for your weapons of choice. Then use whatever mod budget you have left to fill out your stats. Alright, that's the build. Welcome to the second half of the video. Now we're going to learn how to do this to your opponents. Freeze! And also talk about making the build your own. But first, if you're new here and you enjoy the content, then a like, comment, and sub will be greatly appreciated. So when I first saw the build Cammy was playing, I more or less followed it to a T, and then I remembered how much I suck with hand cannons in the Crucible. Don't worry, I'm not going to bore you with that footage. So I swapped out my Time Lost Fatebringer with explosive rounds and kill clip, which sounds awesome, right? But yeah, I suck with it. But I swapped in my trusty God-rolled Time-Worn Spire. Is there a weapon that just clicks for you, and you feel like you can win just about every engagement? That's what this Time-Worn Spire does for me. And that is lesson number 1. No matter what the meta currently is, if your playstyle, or in my case, potato aim, doesn't let you perform well, then don't force it. Use something you're comfortable with that feels right for you. I'm not saying ignore the meta entirely, but in the current sandbox, there are a ton of viable weapon archetypes that can be competitive. For some, this may be a 120 or 140 hand cannon, of which there are many to choose from. For others, it could be aggressive or lightweight SMGs, high impact or rapid fire pulse rifles, or even rapid fire scouts can do well in the right hands. So if you've put in time, but a quote-unquote meta weapon just isn't clicking for you, it's totally fine to put it down for something you're more comfortable with. So I swapped out the hand cannon for my Time-Worn, and I started to do much better. But something was still not quite right. You see, there's something that inevitably seems to happen to my ape brain when I'm using a shotgun, which causes me to lose all common sense, and I just start blindly chasing down kills and throwing my life away. I could be just a few kills short of a wee ran, but then something possesses my body, and the next thing I know, I'm shouting "Ape Strong," barreling headfirst into the other team's mosh pit. And I know I'm not the only one that does this, and it doesn't happen every engagement. But it's a guarantee. At some point during a match, it will happen, and we hates it. You know what doesn't cause me to turn into an ape? Using a more civilized weapon, like a fusion rifle. So I threw on my Zealot's Reward, And finally, everything felt right. I had all my ranges covered, my favorite weapons in hand, and the build finally started to fall into place. Because as much as observing and emulating a good player can help improve your own game, at some point you're going to settle into your own playstyle. Remember earlier when I mentioned I swapped from Whisper of Rending to Conduction? That's another choice you'll have to make based on the way you play and the specific weapons you use. If you find yourself more often than not using a kinetic primary to try and shatter frozen opponents, then it'll make sense for you to use Whisper of Rending. This can be a very oppressive build when played right. Coldsnap grenades with this build have a ridiculously fast cooldown, so throw them literally every chance you get. Even if you don't connect, you'll make your enemies have to take time to avoid the grenade, and this pause will allow you to catch them off guard. But try to anticipate the enemy's position, and constantly lob both your grenades and melee around corners, behind cover, and more often than not, you will either connect or force them to move where you want them to. The Rift Freeze has a bit of a learning curve, but once you've got the timing down, it is insanely fun to freeze an entire group of enemies. At first, I was a bit too aggressive with it, charging in trying to get the Rift off, and it would get me killed more often than not. So you need to play it smart. Don't forgo your weapons and try to force the Rift Freeze, and over time, it'll naturally work its way into your gameplay. Even when you know you're going down, it's still worth it to toss out your grenade in melee. I've often been able to buy my teammates time to turn the tide of battle, or just take the enemy out of the match for a couple extra seconds. Those precious seconds could stop them from getting to a zone, a key sniper lane, or to your own spawn. So don't feel like you're wasting your abilities because they will be back up in no time. I'm sure you've often heard people saying not to sit on your super in PvE. It's the same thing. The faster and more often you use your abilities, the more abilities you'll get off throughout a match. A great man once said, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." Wayne Gretzky. Michael Scott. LucidFlux. I mean, it makes sense, right? Anyway, thanks for tuning in. I leave you now with a full, unedited gameplay so you can see how the build flows throughout a match. I'll see you on the flippity flip.
Capture and defend, Guardians. You captured Zone A. Enemy claims Zone C. Enemy claims Zone B. Enemy has advantage. Zone C captured. You have advantage. You captured Zone B. That's a power play. You took them, now hold them. Zone C lost. You made that look easy, Warlock. Enemy has advantage. Zone C captured. Zone advantage is yours. Zone B lost. Together as one. I love it. You have zone advantage. Zone B captured. Power play. Keep the pressure on. You're scaring them. They'll never want to match with you again. Zone C captured. Power play. Keep the pressure on. Zone A lost. You captured Zone A. That's a power play. You took them, now hold them. They have advantage. 5 minutes remain. A strong start. Fight on. Zone B captured. You have advantage. Zone A lost. They have advantage. Zone C captured. Zone advantage is yours. Zone B lost. Enemy has zone advantage. 3 minutes. Hold strong, and this battle is yours. Zone C lost. It's a power play. Get those zones back. You captured Zone B. Zone advantage is yours. This is amazing! You're almost there. 1 minute. Won't be long now. Zone B lost. Enemy has advantage. You captured Zone C. You have zone advantage. It's not over until I sing, Guardian. And I never sing. Zone A lost. You captured Zone B. You have advantage. A victory well executed. Double down. Impressive. You could give the Red Jacks a lesson in territory control.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.